The Alpha's Broken Mate, a wolf shifter romance, written by Lily Robert. Prologue. The wolves of the northern pack have learned to time their morning walks perfectly. Not because they enjoy the crisp dawn air or the way frost paints their ancestral grounds in silver. No, they come to watch Bianca Winters make her daily pilgrimage of shame. She keeps her eyes fixed on the worn path as she walks, counting each step like a prayer. 27 to the ancient oak where they first threw rocks at her. 53 to the corner where they gather to snarl threats. 112 to the iron gates that never open. A chorus of growls rises around her, right on schedule. Winters, bitch. How dare she show her face? Go home, traitor. Something sails past her ear, probably garbage, though they'd graduated to stones last week. Bianca doesn't flinch. There's almost comfort in their hatred now, a familiar rhythm to their cruelty. Besides, she deserves far worse than this. The hill path stretches before her, winding through territory her family helped destroy. Each step stirs whispers that follow like shadows. Look at her crawling back every morning. How dare she? After what her pack did. Bianca's fingers curl around the healer's bag at her side. Its weight anchors her, reminds her why she endures this daily gauntlet. Someone needs her help, whether he wants it or not. The great manor looms ahead, a fortress of shadows against the dawn sky. Every window has been sealed shut, heavy curtains drawn tight as if to keep out more than just light. No one has seen the Alpha emerge in months. Rumors whisper through the pack that something happened to him during the invasion, something that keeps him locked away in perpetual darkness. 2 weeks she's been coming here, and 2 weeks she's been turned away. But still she comes, because what else can she do? Her shame won't let her leave, and her guilt won't let her stop trying. Right on cue, the gatekeeper's lip curls at her approach. She doesn't have to speak anymore. He knows why she's here. Within moments, the beta appears, his expression carved from stone. Alpha Theo will not see you today, Lady Winters. The words are familiar as breathing now. She nods, turns, begins her long walk back. Above her, the manor's dark windows seem to watch her retreat, holding secrets she can't begin to understand. Behind her, a young wolf whispers to his mother, "Why does she keep coming?" "Because she has to," the mother answers. After what they did? Bianca's shoulders stay straight as she descends the hill, each step measured and calm. Let them watch. Let them hate. She will return tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. After all, penance isn't meant to be easy. How else can she atone for helping destroy everything these people hold dear?
Chapter 1, Theo. And the Eastern Border Patrols report increased activity from rogues. Page's voice drones on, dutifully delivering his daily report. Theo doesn't move from his position by the window, barely containing the snarl building in his throat. His wolf paces beneath his skin, restless and savage after months of confinement. The beast wants out, wants to run, to hunt, to tear something apart with teeth and claws, until the rage finally bleeds out. But that's not an option anymore. The treasury shows improvements. Page continues, his scent betraying his unease. But I don't see the pack moving forward if you're going to lead it from here. The point, Page. He growls. Even his own voice sounds foreign these days, rough from disuse. Theo practically hears his beta weighing his words before speaking next. The Winters healer came again this morning, he says. Theo's snarl finally breaks free, echoing off stone walls. Just the name sends ice through his veins, followed by familiar burning fury. The Winters. The pack that had attacked without warning or cause, that had brought his people to their knees, the ones who'd wielded nightshade like a surgeon's blade. Precise and merciless. She's been coming for 2 weeks, Page continues carefully. Our healers are overwhelmed and her reputation is... Her reputation, Theo's laugh holds no humor. Like her pack's reputation for loyalty before they turned on us. The memory rises unbidden. The invasion, the screams, the burning in his veins as poison spread through his system. Now that same poison has left him trapped in this cage of darkness, maintaining a facade of strength through reputation alone. Silas is dead, Paige reminded him quietly. Theo sighs. Yes, he's been told, but does it really matter now? The damage is done. He remembers him as a child, Silas. Who could have guessed that the spoiled brat from the neighboring pack would become such a devastating enemy? That the boy who'd gotten by on charm alone would somehow gain the power to bring entire packs to their knees? But he had. Somehow Silas had found his power, and he'd used it to manipulate the strongest pack in the territory into attacking Theo's people. For Theo's natural leadership abilities had always driven Silas mad with jealousy. The Winters claim they were under his spell, Paige says. Other packs confirm similar experiences. And you believe them? Theo interrupts. There is a beat of silence. I believe we need help, Alpha, comes the reply. The pack suffers while I protect them, Theo warns, voice deadly quiet. Would you rather I show our enemies exactly how vulnerable we've become? Shall I invite them in to finish what they started? Silence falls heavy as stone. But if this healer could fix you, Paige tries one last time. If she could return your... Leave me, Theo snarls. A soft sigh, then footsteps retreating. The door closes with a final click, leaving Theo alone in his darkness once more. His wolf howls against its chains, demanding violence, freedom, revenge. But revenge requires strength he no longer possesses. All he has left is isolation, pride, and enough raw fury to keep him breathing. So let the Winters healer come and waste her time at his gates. He'd rather rot in darkness than trust their kind again.
Chapter 2, Bianca. When Bianca had been 20, she'd fallen in love with sunshine. At least, that's how she remembers it now. Golden curls catching light, soft blue eyes that made her knees weak, a smile that seemed to glow from within. They would meet in hidden corners of her father's estate, where brief brushes of hands evolved into warm kisses that tasted of forever. His name had been Silas, and Bianca had loved him. Her entire pack had loved him. They'd had no choice in the matter. Because as it turned out, dark, twisted magic had turned them all into Silas's little puppets. He'd enchanted them all into trusting him, admiring him, confiding in him, and waging wars on his behalf. Now the spell is broken, and Silas is dead. And in freedom, Bianca sees through her rose-colored memories. She sees the truth of what he was, and the devastation he left in its wake. She knows her pack has much to atone for. But at night, Bianca's dreams twist and merge like watercolors in rain. She sees the man she thought she loved, feels the love she thought she held, until she wakes up choking. And when she does, for a moment, she doesn't know what's real. Had the emotions she felt really been a lie? Hadn't she not enjoyed Silas' kisses? Her heart had raced, hadn't it? And her wolf had purred. Every morning she stares at herself in the mirror, trying to separate truth from lies. Where did Silas's manipulation end and her own fault begin? She has no answers, only shame and an endless need to make things right. So, when her father had expressed a need for the pack to take action in the north, Bianca had jumped at the chance. Their Alpha won't even answer my calls. Jensen had said 2 weeks ago, it's getting to a point where I don't know if he's alive or if he's planning our deaths. What do you expect? Kate, Bianca's sister, had snapped. After what Silas made us do to them? Our spies say Theo Blackthorne hasn't been seen in months, Jensen had continued. Rumors claim he's still injured from our attack, so perhaps if we were to offer a healer... I'll go. The words had left Bianca's mouth before she could stop them. I'm a healer, I can help. Absolutely not. Kate's eyes had flashed gold. You need time to heal yourself. But Bianca had seen the hope in her father's eyes. And Ryder, Kate's mate, had seen through her fear of abandonment. Darling, Ryder had said quietly, earning a betrayed look from Kate. Sometimes healing means leaving old shadows behind. Now, 2 weeks later, Bianca stares up at those shadows made manifest. Alpha Theo's mansion looming against steel-gray skies, its sealed windows like blind eyes. Is the Alpha there behind those walls? Some whisper he's planning revenge. Others claim he's already dead, and his beta merely maintains the illusion of his presence to keep rival packs at bay. Rumors contradict each other. He's crippled, he's plotting, he's gone mad with grief for his ravaged pack. The only thing for certain is that no one has seen Theo X emerge in months. Sometimes in the pre-dawn light, Bianca thinks she sees movement in the highest tower, a tall figure pacing. But that could be her imagination, crafting monsters from memories. Only the house seems to know the truth, and it keeps its secrets behind curtained windows and locked doors, as silent and mysterious as its master. Chapter 3, Bianca. The motel room's rotary phone rings just after sunset, its shrill tone cutting through Bianca's thoughts. Only one person would call at this hour. How is it really going? Kate's voice carries that edge of worry she's developed since Silas's death. Bianca thinks of rocks sailing past her head, of snarls and whispered threats. Fine, she says brightly. Everyone's very welcoming. Bianca. The warning in Kate's tone is clear. Really, Kate, I'm okay. I deserve it, Bianca thinks. I'm not weak. I can take it. And Alpha Theo? Have you seen him yet? No. He won't see me. But it's not just me. She rushes to add, he won't see anyone. There's always a line at his gates, pack members begging for an audience, for news. The beta handles everything. You don't think... Kate's voice drops lower. The nightshade Silas had our warriors use. You don't think he's actually dead? Bianca's stomach turns at the mention of nightshade. I can't believe we ever agreed to use it. That father still produces it. It's barbaric. It's what makes our pack powerful, Kate reminds her gently. It's what attracted Silas. The words slip out before she can stop them. Silence stretches between them, heavy with shared memories, until Kate finally whispers goodnight. Now, hours later, Bianca lies awake, thoughts circling like vultures. What happened to the mysterious Alpha? Why won't he see anyone? Is he truly injured or plotting revenge, or... A hand trails down her spine, familiar and unwelcome. Such heavy thoughts for such a weak little Omega. Bianca squeezes her eyes shut. Shut up. But you know I'm right. Silas's voice carries that honeyed mockery she'd once mistaken for affection. You're not like Kate. You're the weakest of them all. Shut up. Oh, but you loved me, didn't you, Bianca? His laugh wraps around her like poison. You really, truly loved me? Bianca bolts upright, heart thundering. The room is empty, of course. Silas is dead. But his ghost lingers in her mind, in her memories, in every shadow that makes her doubt herself. She can't sleep. Not with his voice echoing in her head. Not with so many questions unanswered. Tears burn in Bianca's eyes, and suddenly she's furious with herself. What right does she have to cry? Kate had suffered for years, knowing the truth about Silas while everyone dismissed her as paranoid. Meanwhile, Bianca had lived in blissful ignorance, wrapped in the comfort of his spell. Her sister had endured real pain, real isolation. If Kate were here, she wouldn't be hiding in a motel room feeling sorry for herself. She'd have already found a way to help this pack. Before she can second-guess herself, Bianca throws on clothes and slips out into the night. The manor looms against star-scattered skies, more fortress than home. No crowds gather at this hour, no sneering faces to dodge, just shadows and silence. She circles through the woods behind the estate, heart thundering as she studies the guard patterns. There, the window she's noticed always stays open, like the house itself is gasping for air. When the guard turns, she scales the wall with trembling fingers, cursing herself for breaking every diplomatic protocol imaginable. But she's desperate, ready to beg this Alpha to let her heal him, or his people to let her try if he's truly as injured as rumors claim. The house feels different at night, hollow and haunted. Bianca follows her instincts, remembering where Paige always glances when people ask after his Alpha. The highest room in the highest tower, like something from a fairy tale gone wrong. Only when she eases the door open, plunging into absolute darkness, does she realize how monumentally stupid this is. A whiff of pure Alpha scent hits her, masculine and powerful, and reality crashes in. She's just broken into a rival Alpha's private chambers. At night, while he's probably sleeping. If he doesn't kill her on sight, it'll be a miracle. "Who's there?" The voice emerges from shadows, deep, gravelly, carrying deadly promise. Moonlight filters through heavy curtains, revealing a massive figure seated by the window. Even in shadow, his presence fills the room like storm clouds before lightning strikes. Broad shoulders, sharp jaw, the kind of raw power that should send her running. Instead, something inside her comes alive. The pull hits like a physical blow, magnetic, inexorable, terrifying. Every cell in her body seems to reach for him, a strange recognition singing through her blood. Mate. The word echoes in her mind, in her bones, in places too deep for thought. It feels inescapable, impossible, like magic. Horror floods her system. "You love me, don't you, Bianca?" Silas's voice whispers in her memory. "You'd do anything for me." The Alpha rises, stalking toward her with predatory grace. His fingers twitch slightly, reaching into empty air like he's testing its substance, but Bianca's too trapped in panic to understand why. "Who are you?" he demands. He towers over her now, all rugged features and coiled strength. His face. God, she wants to trace every line like she's known it all her life, like she's been waiting to find it. A whimper escapes her throat. No, this isn't real. This is enchantment. This is... She meets his eyes, desperate to break whatever spell this is, and freezes. Those eyes, storm gray and beautiful, stare past her rather than at her. His expression remains carefully neutral, no recognition despite their proximity. Like Bianca isn't even there. Like he cannot see her. Because he can't, she realizes. This man is blind. His hand reaches for her face, and Bianca both feels joy and horror as she realizes she used to feel the same sort of joy when Silas reached for her. And it had all been a lie. The shift takes her without warning, one heartbeat human, the next running on 4 legs, fleeing the overwhelming cocktail of attraction and terror and shame. Behind her, she hears his sharp intake of breath, but she doesn't stop. She runs until the mate bond's pull feels less like drowning, until Silas's ghost fades from her mind, until the night swallows her whole. Just a little further, she thinks, just until I can breathe again, until I can think. The snap of metal is deafening in the night air. Pain explodes through her front leg as the trap's teeth bite deep. Bianca's yelp echoes through the trees, high and desperate. She thrashes, each movement sending fresh agony through her limb, but the trap holds firm. No. They'll find her. They'll take her back there. Back to him and that overwhelming pull she doesn't trust, can't trust. Heavy footsteps approach through the underbrush, multiple sets getting closer. Bianca yanks harder at her trapped leg, mindless of the pain, of the blood matting her fur. She has to get out, has to run, has to... A flashlight beam cuts through the darkness and Bianca's heart stops.
Chapter 4, Theo. Someone had been in his room. Theo stands frozen by the window, his wolf clawing beneath his skin, desperate to track the intruder. But his dulled senses make tracking impossible. Just another reminder of how far he's fallen. Only 2 wolves are allowed in this wing of the estate. Paige, his beta, who left yesterday for a week of diplomatic meetings, and Anne, his housekeeper. But even with his compromised senses, Theo would have recognized Anne's shuffling gait, her habit of humming under her breath. No, this had been someone else. Someone who'd slipped past his defenses like they didn't exist. His fingers traced the windowsill. A habit formed since the Winters attack changed everything. Since nightshade poison had worked its way through his system, stealing first his sight, then his enhanced senses, leaving him trapped in this endless darkness. At first he'd believed it temporary. His pack was vulnerable, reeling from the invasion, so he'd hidden his condition while gathering allies against the Winters and their puppet master, Silas. But weeks became months, and instead of improving, his condition deteriorated. Now he can barely detect sense at all, and his sight. Theo's laugh holds no humor. What sight? The darkness is absolute now, his world reduced to echoes and shadows. Paige insists their only hope lies in Theo's arranged mating to Olivia, the beta daughter who'd agreed to the match before the attack. The alliance would strengthen their position, but Theo hasn't seen her since that day. Would she honor their arrangement once she discovers what he's become? Or would she flee, taking her pack's support with her? His wolf snarls at the thought, feral after months of confinement. The beast wants to run, to fight, to prove it isn't weak. But running would mean revealing his vulnerability. Fighting would expose his weakness. So they stay trapped, wolf and man, in this cage of darkness. Each day, Theo feels his control slipping further. His thoughts grow more primitive, his wolf's instincts stronger. Soon, he might become nothing more than the animal inside him. Cornered, frightened, dangerous. Perhaps that's inevitable, he thinks. Perhaps one day they'll have to put him down like any other feral wolf. If so, he'll use whatever time he has left to protect his pack. It's all he has left. It's all he is. Anne's footsteps approach his door, their familiar rhythm accompanied by unusual hesitation. Theo could ease her worry with a word. But he doesn't. He never does anymore. Seeing those who once trusted him, who looked to him for strength, only reminds him of what he's become. To his surprise, Anne breaks their usual silence. Alpha? Her tone carries warning. Something's wrong. What is it? There's a wolf caught in one of the border traps. Theo frowns. A wolf in the trap? The intruder from his room, no doubt. Who is it, he asks. An Omega female. Anne replies. I don't recognize her scent or markings, not one of ours. Theo's mind races. An unknown wolf who's already proven capable of breaching his defenses. If she escapes, tells others what she's seen. Is she still trapped? Yes, but Anne shifts uncomfortably. She won't let anyone near, snapping, snarling. Theo opens his mouth ready to tell her to get Paige when he remembers the latter isn't here. Damn it. Should I fetch someone else from the pack? Anne asks. Theo paces, wolf bristling. Anyone else would question why their alpha doesn't handle this himself. Anyone else might free the intruder, might notice something wrong. I'll deal with it. Alpha? Surprise colors Anne's voice before she catches herself. The walk outside is excruciating. Every step could betray his weakness, every movement expose his vulnerability. Anne guides him with subtle coughs and cleared throats, but his pride burns with each correction. Then cool night air washes over his skin, and for a moment, the world expands. His wolf quiets, soothed by the breeze carrying whispers of pine and freedom. There, Alpha. He can't see the trapped wolf, can barely smell her through the stronger sense of earth and decay. But he hears her, pained growls, desperate shuffling, the song of a cornered animal. Theo moves forward, letting his alpha presence flood the space between them like thunder before a storm. The growls intensify. Challenge meeting challenge. Down, he growls. The wolf snarls back, metal clanking as she struggles. Theo stalks closer, each step deliberate. I said down. A whimper breaks through the growls. Only then does he reach out, finding fur that trembles beneath his touch. His hand finds her neck, applying firm, steady pressure. That's it, he murmurs, gentling his tone now that she's acknowledged his authority. You're not going anywhere. The last of her defiance melts away. And the trap. He tightens his grip, ready for one final show of dominance. But instead, a warm tongue laps at his fingers. Stay still, he instructs as he hears Anne opening the trap. But instead of fighting, she only continues her gentle licking, even as metal springs release. His wolf preens at the complete submission, pleasure coursing through him at this small victory. Can she walk? He asks. The wound's deep, Anne replies. She'll need help. Without thinking, Theo scoops the wolf into his arms. She weighs nothing, settling against his chest with complete trust, her breath warm against his collarbone. His wolf rumbles with satisfaction. At feeling useful for the first time in months. At this small proof that he can still command respect instead of just hiding. Let's get her inside, he says, already turning back toward the house, following Anne's footsteps and the wolf's steady heartbeat against his chest. He should question this, should worry about the stranger in his arms. But for now, he simply enjoys the warmth of another living being who doesn't seem to notice or care about his brokenness.
Chapter 5. Bianca. Being carried in an alpha's arms should terrify her. Bianca knows this, knows she's breached his territory, invaded his private chambers, and will likely face severe consequences once he discovers what she really is. Her racing heart screams at her to struggle, to flee, to do something other than lie here, helplessly in the arms of a potentially hostile alpha. Yet her body betrays her, melting into his touch. Heat radiates from his chest, and something primal inside her preens at his proximity, desperate for more contact. Even her injured leg seems to hurt less, soothed by his steady grip. Stop that, she scolds herself. They move through empty halls, Theo following Anne's lead. Despite his blindness, he navigates turns and doorways with fluid grace, as if he's memorized every inch of his domain. Not once does he stumble or hesitate. Not once does his grip on her falter. They enter what appears to be a staff living area, all worn furniture and practical surfaces. A heavy wooden table dominates the center of the room, and Theo gently lowers her onto its scarred surface. His hands linger for a moment, checking her position, ensuring her injured leg isn't pressed against the wood. "Who are you?" he demands, voice deceptively soft. "What are you doing on my territory?" Bianca's ears flatten against her skull. She should change back. Should explain about wanting to heal him, about recognizing the symptoms of nightshade poisoning he's experiencing, similar to Kate's when she'd be poisoned as well. Should tell him that she might be able to help, that she's seen these symptoms before, the blindness, the dulled senses, all of it. But every time she reaches for her human form, Silas's voice whispers in her mind. "Yes, Bianca, go on. Change back," he taunts. "Tell him about the bond you're clearly the only one feeling here. Enjoy falling head over heels for a man who doesn't love you, again." Panic claws up her throat. The alpha's watching her, obviously expectant despite not being able to even see her, and Bianca wants to obey, wants to shift back, but then what will he say when she changes back? Or worst, what will she do? Fear twists her heart. "I do hope you don't intend on pretending you're just a regular wolf," the alpha comments, sounding unimpressed. She's not trying to deceive him. She wants to change back. She does. But she can't. She tries to focus, tries to think more like a human, to draw back the wolf. The wolf will not budge. "Change back right now," Theo commands. Bianca whines, shuffling on the table until her leg screams in protest. She tries again, desperately reaching for her human form, but Silas's voice grows louder. "Unless... perhaps you still love me, Bianca. Is that it? Are you ashamed that you still love me?" A pathetic whimper escapes her throat. How embarrassing to be stuck like this. She'd never had problems with her wolf before. It's pathetic. She's even more pathetic than she thought she was. "Alpha," Anne's voice cuts through the tension. "The poor thing is terrified." "I can see that," Theo snaps. then catching himself, well, in a manner of speaking. His hand finds her head again, and despite everything, Bianca leans into his touch. His fingers card through her fur, steady and certain, and something inside her unclenches at the contact. "She's trembling," he murmurs. "Perhaps she's too afraid to shift back, sir." Anne's tone carries careful suggestion. "Too afraid?" Theo's fingers still against Bianca's neck. "I hear it happen sometimes." Anne moves closer, her presence grandmotherly and kind. "Maybe if we give her time—" "Are you suggesting we keep her here?" Bianca focuses on his touch, on the low rumble of his voice, finding it impossibly soothing. She's too desperate to feel embarrassed about it. She just wants to stop hearing Silas, whatever works. "Well, surely we can't release her until we know why she's here," Anne reasons. "Can we, Alpha?" "I suppose not." A slight pause, his hand freezing on Bianca's head. "Should we send for a healer for her leg?" The word healer sends ice through Bianca's veins. She's the healer. She came here to help him. "I'm sure it will heal just fine on its own, sir," Anne replies, giving Theo a considering look. "Yes," Theo clears his throat. "You're right, of course." Bianca whines at the loss of contact, shaking her head slightly. His hand returns to her fur immediately, and she relaxes, pleased despite herself. "Then shall we get her down to the basement, sir?" Anne suggests. "The basement?" His tone sharpens. "Where there are no windows?" "Well, where else can we make sure she can't escape?" Another pause, longer this time. "Right, you're right." He doesn't sound convinced, but he lifts her again, careful of her injury. Bianca clutches a desperate hope. Maybe once they leave her alone, she can find her human form again. Maybe she can figure out how to fix this mess she's created.
Chapter 6, Theo. The wolf's heartbeat drums against his chest, quick but steady. Too steady for a prisoner. Too calm for an intruder. Theo's own wolf stirs beneath his skin, more alert than it's been in months, tracking each subtle shift of the creature in his arms. She should be fighting. Should be struggling, snarling, trying to escape. Instead, her head rests heavy on his shoulder, breath warm against his neck, trusting, or pretending to trust. His lips curl back from his teeth at the thought. "Left here, Alpha," Anne murmurs, and he follows the sound of her footsteps toward the basement stairs. His wolf bristles at being led, at this constant dependence on others' eyes, but the weight in his arms settles something deeper, darker. The part of him that's been prowling the edges of his mind since the poison took his sight. A hint of scent reaches him, faint, dulled like everything else, but there, sweet, with an edge of fear that makes his chest tight. His wolf growls, suddenly restless, not at the intruder, but at the thought of that fear, at the wrongness of it. The basement has a secure holding area, Anne continues, but Theo barely hears her. His thoughts circle like prey. Why won't she shift back? What could terrify a wolf so completely, unless it's all an act, unless she's a spy sent to... The body in his arms trembles, just slightly, and his grip tightens instinctively. His wolf surges forward, protective urges warring with months of paranoia. He can't trust this. Can't trust anything. And yet, "I'll keep her in my quarters." "Alpha?" Anne's shock is palpable. No one else can watch her properly. His mind scrambling to rationalize the wolf's sudden demand. The basement is too far. If she tries to escape... "But sir, you're private." "I'll hear any movement." He's already turning, retracing familiar steps upward. Better to keep the threat close. The threat. His wolf snarls at the word, at the lie of it. This creature, who smells of sweetness and fear, who trembles in his arms but makes no move to flee. She is many things, but threat isn't one of them. "As you wish, Alpha," Anne says quietly. Theo stalks away before she can question him further. Before he can question himself. His wolf paces beneath his skin, agitated and eager in equal measure. For months they've been caged, growing wilder with each passing day. Now something pulls him toward this stranger, this mystery. and he doesn't understand why. He only knows that the thought of locking her away in darkness is suddenly inconceivable.
Chapter 7. Bianca. Bianca's heart races as Theo leads her to his room, though she has to admit it works too in her favor. The second he falls asleep, I'm out of here, she thinks. Still, something about following him into his private space makes her fur prickle with uncertainty. Anne hovers in the doorway after Theo deposits Bianca inside, her presence making the already strange situation more awkward. "Do you need anything else?" she asks awkwardly. "No, thank you," Theo replies, rushing to close the door. Then he just stands there, one hand still on the doorknob, as if he's suddenly forgotten what to do with himself. "I don't even know why I did that," he mutters, more to himself than to her. With a deep sigh, he crosses the room and sinks into what must be his favorite chair, rubbing his face with both hands. Bianca watches him for a moment, struck by how defeated he looks. Like now that he's back here with nothing to do, he is weighed down again. Wanting to show her gratitude for his help, and perhaps a bit of sympathy because it's her family's fault he is injured, she pads over and settles beside his chair. "You're going to run the second my eyes close, aren't you?" he asks. The question comes out soft, resigned. Guilt twists in her chest. That had been exactly her plan, and somehow he knows it. She shifts uncomfortably on her pause. "I don't need to close my eyes not to see you," he adds, his voice barely above a whisper. Bianca can't help but scoff, a strange sound coming from a wolf's throat. "Oh, so you knew then." Theo's shoulders slump further, if that's possible. He looks so frustrated, his scent sharpening until Bianca can't take it. Moving closer, she gently rubs her head against his, the only form of consolation she can offer in this shape. Again, she tries to shift back to human form, but nothing happens, and a pitiful whine escapes her throat. What if she's stuck like this? "You're trembling," Theo observes. He stands up and makes his way to the fireplace in the corner, kneeling down to feel around for wood. Bianca watches as his hands move uncertainly over the hearth, accidentally making logs of wood tumble down. "Shit, can't even keep people warm anymore." The words are barely audible, but they tug at something in her chest. Oh, for heaven's sake. Making a decision, she moves closer and carefully nudges his hand toward the stack of wood. Theo goes completely still for a moment, and she fears she's crossed some line. "Great job, Bianca. Way to make it weird." But then he relaxes, allowing her to guide him. Together, they arrange the logs, and she helps him locate the lighter on the mantel. They work in comfortable silence, the simple task creating an unexpected connection between them. After the fire is lit, Theo settles on the floor beside her. He doesn't speak again, but somehow the silence feels right. Bianca finds herself growing drowsy as she watches the flames dance, the crackling wood and Theo's steady breathing creating a soothing rhythm. "My leg barely hurts anymore," she realizes distantly as she drifts off. When she wakes, the fire has burned down to embers, and early morning light is seeping through the windows. For a moment, she's disoriented. Where am I? Then she spots Theo asleep in his chair and remembers everything. As she shifts position, she realizes with a start that she's human again and completely naked. Oh, thank God. A small sound of relief escapes her before she can stop it, and Theo stirs in his chair. Oh no. Terror freezes her in place. She watches him like a deer in headlights, her heart thundering so loudly she's sure it will wake him. "Don't move, don't breathe, don't even think too loud," she tells herself frantically. After what feels like an eternity, she gathers her courage to move. But at the tiniest movement, he groans. By the time his eyes flutter open, Bianca is back into her wolf form, her pulse still racing beneath her fur. She only realizes she changed back when a growl comes out her throat. "You're still here," Theo observes. She is. And for some reason, Bianca knows she won't be able to change back anytime soon. Chapter 8. Bianca. The sound of running water from Theo's shower fills the room as Bianca tries again to shift. Come on. Come on. Her muscles strain with the effort, but every time she gets close, Silas's voice echoes in her mind. Are you really going to let magic bind you again? The words send ice through her veins, and she loses her grip on the transformation. I never loved you, the voice says, and neither will he. It's Silas' voice whispering these things, and yet Bianca agrees. This pull toward Theo, this instinctive trust, it's another trap. Just like Silas's love had been. The mating bond feels like chains around her heart, and she can't breathe through the panic of being caught again. When Theo emerges from the bathroom, his hair still damp, he tilts his head. Are you hungry? He asks. Bianca realizes she is and barks sharply in response. A snort escapes him. All right, Anne should be here soon. Does he spend all his time just waiting for others to bring him things? Bianca wonders with growing concern. She watches him standing there, so still, and remembers Anne carefully guiding him yesterday. Understanding dawns softly, sadly. He's blind, his wolf senses dulled. Of course he needs help navigating his own home. Her heart aches as she imagines how difficult this must be for him, how frustrating to depend on others for such basic things. A gentle whine escapes her before she can stop it. I know, Theo says, misinterpreting her sound. I'm hungry too, sorry. Making a decision, Bianca moves to his side and gently nudges his hand onto her back. Come on, she thinks, urging him toward the door. She can smell how his wolf strains against its cage. Being cooped up in here isn't helping either of them. Even if she can't heal him in this form, she can at least get him moving. You want us to go outside? Theo asks, voice strained. She guides him carefully to the door in response, nudging him forward as they reach it. He is hesitant, frustrated. She sits and waits, patient. Fine, Theo growls reluctantly. They leave the room, Bianca secretly pleads. To move down the long hallways, she keeps close to his side, letting him use her as an anchor with each step. Are you my guard dog now, little one? Theo asks, amusement coloring his voice. Bianca barks twice, offended. I am not a dog, she thinks. Guess that means no. The smirk in his voice is unmistakable. When they reach the kitchen, Anne's eyes widen at the sight of them moving freely together. She smells less afraid, she observes, though still not human. Theo's brow furrows. Are you stuck? He asks Bianca directly. She barks once for yes. Do you know why? 2 barks. That's a no. The day passes with Bianca continuously nudging Theo to move around the house. She can't heal him in her wolf form, but she knows his wolf needs this, needs to be freed from its cage. Theo wouldn't just let himself be guided if it didn't. Though every time she tries to guide him toward the front door, he resists. I can't risk people seeing me like this, he finally whispers when they're back in his room, and I can't risk you escaping and telling them. That night, Bianca wakes in human form again and she thinks, this is it. I could leave right now. The thought pounds in her head as she takes a step toward the door. People are going to start to worry. Kate might riot if she doesn't hear from Bianca. Time to go. She can't stay here any longer and her leg is healed. Her hand reaches for the handle, trembling, just turn it and run. But then she looks at Theo, really looks at him, and sees the suffering etched in his face even in sleep. His mind is feral, his wolf caged and raging. He needs help. And to give it is why she came here in the first place. This has nothing to do with their bond or whatever pull she feels for him, which he doesn't seem to feel back. This is about penance, about making things right with him and his pack. Kneeling beside his chair, she reaches out with shaking fingers and presses them gently to his temples. She lets her power flow through her touch, a soft golden warmth that seeks out the ragged edges where his humanity and wolf nature war with each other, trying to smooth them. She came here to heal, and she will. Chapter 9, Bianca. Days blend into one another, marked by a strange rhythm that becomes increasingly familiar. During daylight hours, Bianca remains in wolf form, unable to shift no matter how she tries when Theo is present. Only in the deepest hours of night, when he sleeps, does her human form return to her, a mystery that leaves her puzzled but grateful for these moments when she can heal him. "Sarah?" Theo asks one morning, determined to guess her real name. Bianca snorts softly at this first guess. "Margaret?" A gentle huff of rejection. "Patrice?" This earns him an outraged growl that makes him laugh, his face lighting up with genuine mirth. All right. How about Brunhilde?" His suggestions are getting more outlandish by the day, but she can hear the warmth in his voice, the way he's turning their forced silence into something playful. She bumps against his leg in protest, and his laugh grows warmer. These moments of playfulness are becoming more frequent, precious gems in their quiet days together. She guides him through the house with increasing confidence, and he follows her lead with growing trust. During their days, Theo shares stories about the pack, choosing mostly happy memories at first, summer festivals where the whole community gathered under the full moon, the time his sister tried to teach him to dance and they both ended up in the pond. Bianca listens, memorizing every detail, every smile that crosses his face as he remembers better times. But one night, as they sit by the crackling fire, his voice grows heavy. "I should have seen it earlier," he says quietly. The kind of person Silas was becoming, even as children. He'd charm people just to watch them fall apart later, found it amusing. His hands clench. He'd pick apart their weaknesses, use their trust against them, and I was blind to it even then. The memories hit Bianca like physical blows. Silas's charming smile, the way he'd seemed so understanding at first, how he'd used everything she'd confided against her later. Her distress must show somehow, because Theo's hand finds her fur, stroking gently. After that night, she starts resting her head in his lap during their evening conversations, finding comfort in the simple contact. Time passes in gentle waves. She coaxes Theo to explore more of the house, watching his confidence grow incrementally. His scent begins to change too, becoming stronger, more wolf-like, telling her the healing is working. Finally, he agrees to venture outside, but only if she's certain no one will see them. In his wolf form, they explore the estate together. His movements become more sure as his senses slowly return, and he begins to follow her more by instinct than by touch. These moments feel like freedom, like hope. That evening, as they rest by the fire, Theo buries his nose in her fur, inhaling deeply. His scent wraps around her, warm and rich and right, in a way that makes her want to melt into the touch. She can't remember the last time she felt this peaceful, this safe. Then he starts speaking, voice low and pained, about the Winters' betrayal, the poisoning, the hatred that still burns in him for her family. "They even sent their daughter here to heal me," he says, bitter laugh catching in his throat. As if that could make up for what they did. Later that night, in human form, Bianca's hands shake as she channels her healing power into him. Would he see this as another betrayal? Her deception, her silent presence in his home, her gentle touches, all while keeping her true identity hidden? He would hate me, she thinks, heart aching. He would never forgive this. She should leave. She knows she should. But as she looks down at his sleeping face, runs a gentle hand along his cheek, she realizes with startling clarity that she can't. Not anymore. The truth of it settles in her chest like a physical weight, somewhere between the quiet conversations and shared silences, between guiding touches and gentle healing, she's lost her heart to him.
Chapter 10. Theo. Theo opens his eyes to vague shapes and colors, and his breath catches in his throat. This can't be real. He'd been hesitant to hope, even as his other senses gradually returned. His scent had grown stronger by the day, especially in wolf form, and that alone felt like more blessing than he deserved. But this is different. In the darkness, he can make out the tip of his finger, can see the dying fire casting a soft orange glow across the room. It's not the absolute darkness he's grown accustomed to. It's the natural shadow of night. A choked gasp escapes him, his mind reeling with possibility. But then something else captures his attention entirely. A presence beside him, warm and peaceful. Her scent. Oh, her scent. He knows it as intimately as his own now, sweet and fresh, like the first breath of spring, like life itself. It's so strong, so close that a contented hum rises in his throat. Theo turns to his right, and his heart nearly stops. There's someone asleep beside him, but it's not a wolf. Through the blur of his returning vision, he sees silk-spun hair spreading across his pillow, like liquid gold in the fading firelight. His eyes trace the delicate curve of a bare shoulder, creamy skin gleaming softly in the darkness. She's the most beautiful thing he's ever seen, even through the haze of his imperfect sight. And something deep in his chest aches. Is this his mysterious companion? Of course it is. He'd know that scent anywhere. She seems so young, so delicate in her human form, her peaceful breathing matching the tranquil notes in her scent. She's close enough that his mouth waters, his wolf stirring with an intensity that startles him. His fingers itch to touch, to trace the curve of her cheek, to tangle in that golden hair. He almost does, but catches himself. Though she's half sprawled across his bed, though he's grown used to touching her wolf form. This is different. She hasn't given permission for this, hasn't chosen to show herself to him this way. The realization doesn't stop the wanting, though. His wolf howls inside him, desperate to touch, to hold, to protect, to keep. The intensity of his reaction leaves him bewildered. Careful not to disturb her, he eases himself from the bed. Despite his still blurry vision, he navigates the room with surprising ease. His restored hearing and scent, more than making up for what his eyes can't yet fully see. Rapid footsteps in the hallway alert him to Anne's approach. Not wanting her to wake his sleeping guest, he hurries to meet her at the door. Anne starts at finding him up, but he quickly shushes her with a finger to his lips. She leans in close, whispering that there's someone at the gate for him. It can wait until morning, he murmurs, but Anne's grip on his arm tightens. I'm afraid it can't, she whispers back, fear threading through her voice. You need to come. Now. The tension in her tone sets him on edge. With one last glance toward his bed, toward her, he follows Anne downstairs and across the estate to the gates. Through the misty shadows, a cloaked figure emerges. Even with his limited vision, he can tell she's small, petite. His returning senses tell him more. She's a woman, her scent thick with fury and fear and something else. Theo inhales sharply as realization hits him. This woman is with child, and from the way she's growling at him, she is very, very upset with him indeed. Alpha Theo, she growls when he is beside her, her voice shaking with hardened steel. Just what the hell have you done to my sister?
Chapter 11. Bianca. Bianca wakes slowly, drifting up through layers of warmth and contentment. She's cocooned in Theo's scent, wrapped in sheets that smell of him, of them together. Her wolf purrs with satisfaction. This is right. This is where she belongs. She hasn't felt this safe, this at peace, since she can't even remember when. A soft hum of pure contentment escapes her before she can stop it. The sound of her own voice, her human voice, snaps her eyes open. She's human, in Theo's bed, alone. The reality hits her in waves. First comes the shock of her bare skin against his sheets, then the growing horror as her mind catches up with what this means. Her wolf whines in confusion and distress, Where is Theo? He's never left her alone before, not once in all these weeks. Something must be wrong. Why would he leave? Unless... Her human side recoils as the implications stack up. Did he see her? Is that why he's gone? Has her careful charade crumbled in one careless moment of contentment? Her mind spins with possibilities, each worse than the last. She's exposed, vulnerable, her deception laid bare. Breathe, she tells herself, fingers twisting in the sheets as she tries to think rationally through the rising panic. Even if he realized she'd shifted back, he can't actually see her, right? And he's never met Bianca Winters, doesn't know her face. Whatever he might have discovered, she could explain this somehow. She could tell him the truth. The thought dies as quickly as it forms, leaving a bitter taste in her mouth. Theo hates the Winters, hates Bianca for her name alone. If he discovers she's been here all this time, deceiving him, healing him without his knowledge or consent, the trust they've built would shatter. He'd throw her out, and worse, he'd never want to see her again. Her wolf rails against the very thought, while her human side drowns in shame. A sob catches in her throat, raw and painful. He might even be angry enough to break the peace treaty with her father, but somehow that thought barely registers compared to the idea of Theo looking at her with betrayal in his eyes. She realizes with a start that she's shifted back to wolf form in her panic. Oh God, now she won't even be able to explain herself. Where is he? What did he see? What does he know? She leaves the room in a daze, searching for him. Her wolf whines, desperate to find its mate, to fix this, to make things right again. She catches Theo's voice from downstairs and moves toward it, but Anne suddenly appears, blocking her path. Not now, little wolf? Anne's eyes are bright with excitement. The Alpha will see you later. She beams as she continues, each word like a dagger to Bianca's heart. His fiancée is here. Bianca freezes. What? That can't be right. Theo is her mate. She must have heard wrong. She arrived this morning with Paige. Anne's enthusiasm is devastating. He brought her back to settle the mating agreement. Miss Olivia and the Alpha have been engaged for 2 years. It's about time they finally become mates. Bianca's mind fractures between shock and denial. This is her punishment for not telling him the truth, for deceiving him. She's going to lose him. Her heart splinters with each beat. Without conscious thought, she bolts past Anne and bursts into the living room. She has to stop this, has to see him. This can't be happening. She can't lose him. Not now. She finds him seated with Paige and a beautiful young woman with flowing red hair and light blue eyes. The sight makes something primal rise in Bianca's chest, and a snarl rips from her throat. They all turn to stare at her, conversation halting mid-sentence. "Who is this?" the woman asks, startled. How dare she? Bianca's fury ignites. She's Theo's mate. She belongs here. This woman doesn't. Rage and protective instincts consume her as she launches herself forward with a growl, only to be caught mid-leap by strong arms that pull her back against a broad, firm chest. "Is that—" Paige starts, eyes wide with recognition. "Yes," Theo replies, his voice low and pleased. He pulls Bianca closer, his scent and warmth enveloping her, instantly calming the storm inside her. "That's it, darling," he murmurs as she stills against him. "Be good for me." Before either Paige or their guest can speak, he commands, "Leave us." "But Alpha," Paige begins. "I said leave us." Theo's voice brooks no argument. This should be a private moment. After they leave, Theo gently deposits Bianca on the floor, kneeling beside her. She whines softly, torn between conflicting impulses, wanting to reach for him, to demand how he could even think of marrying another when he's hers, but also desperate to explain herself, even as fear holds her back. Theo reaches out slowly, his hand steady. "There," he soothes. "They're gone now, darling. It's just me." Just him, Bianca relaxes slightly at that truth. He's looking at her with his usual fondness. But there's something else now. A sort of wondering awe that makes her breath catch. He looks pleased to see her. Unable to resist, she slowly lets her head settle against his palm. "I'm sorry for leaving you alone," Theo murmurs, his fingers working through her fur in that way that makes her muscles turn to liquid. It's unfair, really. She should be more upset. But it's impossible when he strokes her like this. His touch so tender, it makes her ache. "But I won't ever leave you alone again, Bianca," he says softly. "I promise." She purrs happily before his words register. Then she freezes in horror. "You are Bianca Winters, aren't you?" he asks knowingly. She panics, trying to shrink away from him, but his hand remains gentle on her fur. "Were you afraid of how I'd react?" His voice stays calm, steady. He doesn't sound angry, she tells herself. He doesn't. But she still can't bring herself to look at him. "Please look at me," he asks, his voice so achingly soft it steals her breath. When she finally raises her eyes to his face, her heart stops. He's looking at her like she's a miracle, like she's precious beyond words, like he can't quite believe she's real. And then it hits her. He can see me. "You healed me," he murmurs, voice thick with emotion. "I wondered what was keeping you here, why you didn't try to escape from the confines of this dark, empty home I'm bound to. You could have, many times, yet you stayed. I thought perhaps you were hiding, afraid. But you were healing me. You stayed for me, didn't you?" The reverence in his voice makes her heart thunder. He's speaking as though she's done something extraordinary, as though she's granted him some precious gift. Of course she stayed. It was the right thing to do, the only thing to do. Her pack had betrayed his, had hurt him. But as Theo pulls her close, pressing his lips to the crown of her head, showering her with thanks and praise, she realizes that healing him wasn't truly why she stayed. It was more selfish than that. She stayed because she couldn't bear to leave him, because she wanted to be by his side. He pulls back to look at her, cradling her face between his large palms and smiles. "Hi," he breathes, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Bianca realizes she's human again. Fear flutters in her chest, but Theo's hands are so gentle on her skin, his caresses making her shiver. "I wanted to tell you," she whispers, watching how he drinks and the sound of her voice like it's music. "I didn't want to stay in wolf form, but—" "You were afraid." His expression clouds with concern. She nods slowly. Yes, she supposes she had been afraid. Still is, somewhat. But being able to speak with him, to have him look at her and truly see her for who she is, it's worth facing that fear. "I wasn't really afraid of you." The words tangle in her throat. "Well, I was, but—" Memories of Silas flash through her mind, tainted and bitter. She hadn't wanted to be deceived again, hadn't wanted to trust wrongly. "Your sister told me what happened," Theo says gently. Her eyes snap to his. They're beautiful, so expressive now that he can see. He seems to have come alive with his sight restored. But she can't lose herself in those eyes, not when he just said, "My sister?" she asks. "Kate was here?" "Yes, that's why I left earlier. She was looking for you." His smile is soft. "I promised her she'd see you shortly. She should be back any time now." Bianca nods. She's relieved at the thought of seeing Kate, of explaining everything without risking Theo's anger. She should be elated at this turn of events, but... "Theo?" She meets his eyes slowly, placing her small hand over his. "Please don't mate with that girl." Tears well up as she speaks, her relief and joy suddenly crushed by the thought that even if he isn't angry, he might not want her. Might choose another when he belongs with her. "Darling," he begins, looking troubled, but Bianca can't keep quiet any longer. "You are my mate, Theo." She presses his hand against her bare chest, against her thundering heart. "You belong with me." His eyes widen, lips parting in surprise before spreading into a smile so tender it makes her chest ache. "I know," he murmurs, and the low, possessive purr in his voice sends shivers down her spine. "You do?" she breathes, watching him nod solemnly. "I know." His smile deepens. "I already explained. You don't have to worry about Olivia. You don't have to worry about anything anymore, my love. I'm yours, and you are mine, always." He cradles her face between his palms like she's made of precious crystal, and when his lips meet hers, it feels like coming home. Epilogue. Healing, as it turns out, comes in waves. Some days, everything feels perfect. Theo's hand in hers as they walk through the gardens, his scent wrapping around her like a blanket of safety and love. His eyes follow her movements with wonder, as though he can't quite believe she's real. Other days, the shadows creep in. The first time Theo's kisses grow heated, his hands wandering down her back, pressing her closer, Bianca's wolf form takes over in mere seconds. Fear claws at her mind as Silas's voice whispers, "This isn't real. He doesn't love you. He's tricking you." But Theo never pushes. He simply shifts with her, his wolf form powerful and protective beside her smaller one. Under the canopy of ancient trees, they run together, free from the weight of past wounds. The pack needs their alpha's attention, but Theo makes sure Bianca never feels left out. He includes her in meetings, his hand finding hers under the table. When discussions grow heated, he'll catch her eye across the room, a private smile just for her. At night, they start with simple touch. Fingers intertwined as sleep becomes increasingly elusive, awareness building between them. His scent wraps around her, rich and intoxicating, making her wolf purr with want. Soft kisses leave them breathless, growing deeper, more urgent, hands wandering with increasing boldness, until one night she's panting against his lips. "Please, Theo. More. I need more." "Are you sure?" he asks, his powerful body pressed against hers, skin to fevered skin. She can feel him trembling with restraint, his control hanging by a thread as his hands ghost over her curves, making her arch into his touch. When they're finally one, the pleasure brings tears to her eyes, a completion she never knew she was missing. That first time becomes many, their passion seemingly endless. They almost miss Kate going into labor, lost in their world of heated touches and breathless moans. But nothing could keep Bianca from her sister's side as new life enters their world. She holds Kate's hand through the pain, watches Ryder's face transform with joy as he cradles his daughter. Looking at the tiny bundle, Bianca turns to find Theo's eyes on her, warm with promise. "I want one," she whispers that night, and his smile could light up the darkest corners of their past. He marks her the night she tells him she's pregnant, their child growing safe within her as his teeth find her neck. She marks him in return, though in truth, he's been hers since that first night she found him in the darkness. "I love you," she tells him, watching the sunset paint their world in gold. Their child kicks beneath her heart, and Theo's hand covers hers. "I know," he says, his smile holding all the certainty she once thought lost forever. They heal each other, day by day. He who suffered at Silas's hand, she who almost lost herself to Silas's lies. Together, they build something new from the ashes, something stronger, something true. And in the end, that's what healing is. Not the absence of scars, but the presence of hope. Not the forgetting of pain, but the courage to love anyway. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this story, and if you have, that you'll consider giving it a like or comment in support. Also, if you haven't yet, I really recommend you try Please Reject Me, Alpha. which is Bianca's sister Kate's story and which I'm quite proud of. I'll link it below.